Marcus got the email on a Tuesday. Subject line, compensation update, effective next pay period. He opened it standing in his kitchen, coffee going cold, and there it was. An 8% raise. Almost $6,000 a year he didn't have yesterday. He read it twice. He waited for the feeling. Nothing came. He texted his sister. She said, "Nice," with 2 exclamation points and asked if he was still coming to dinner Sunday. He put the phone down and went back to loading the dishwasher, and somewhere between the raise and the dishwasher, $6,000 a year had already stopped feeling like anything at all. 3 weeks later his first bigger paycheck landed. He checked the number. It was up, technically. It was up by less than half of what he'd expected, and he genuinely could not tell you where the rest went, only that it was gone before he ever touched it. He didn't buy anything. He didn't do anything differently. He just felt, if he's honest, a little more tired and a little more annoyed than he'd felt the week before the raise arrived. Which makes no sense. Which is exactly the point. My name is Horizon, and today we're answering the question that quietly haunts almost everybody who's ever gotten good news from HR. Because I promise you, it is not in your head, and it is not because you're bad with money. There is a very specific, very mechanical set of reasons your $6,000 raise arrives in your life feeling like roughly nothing. So let's walk through them one at a time. All 5. Filter 1, the government gets there first. Marcus's raise was 8%. Nominally, on the offer letter, that's real money. But nobody's paycheck is the number on the offer letter. Between federal income tax, state income tax depending on where you live, and payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare, a meaningful chunk of every new dollar is gone before it ever exists in your bank account. Here's the part that trips people up: America runs on a marginal tax system, which means your raise doesn't get taxed at your average rate. It gets taxed at your top rate. So Marcus's 8% raise, the one that felt like $6,000 in his kitchen that Tuesday, is already down to something closer to $4,500 by the time it reaches his checking account. Nobody announced that subtraction. There was no second email. It just happened, silently, spread across every paycheck for the rest of the year, in amounts too small to notice individually and too consistent to ever add up to anything that feels like a windfall. Filter 2, inflation was already spending your raise before you got it. This is the one that should genuinely make you a little angry, because it means a huge percentage of the raises handed out in this country every single year aren't raises at all. They're maintenance. Here's the arithmetic. If prices went up roughly 4% over the past year and you got a 4% raise, you didn't get a raise. You got a cost of living adjustment with better branding. Your purchasing power, what you can actually buy with your paycheck, is exactly where it was 12 months ago. The number on your pay stub went up. Your life did not. And this is where it gets genuinely unfair, because most companies frame every raise as merit. As reward. As, you earned this. Marcus's manager told him in the calibration meeting that this raise reflected his strong year. What nobody in that meeting said out loud is that a meaningful slice of that reward was never discretionary at all. It was the bare minimum required just to keep Marcus from quietly getting poorer while everyone congratulated him for standing still. Real wage growth, the number that actually matters, the one that measures whether you can buy more stuff than last year, not just more dollars, has spent long stretches of the last 2 decades barely positive. And in plenty of individual years it's gone negative even while nominal paychecks kept climbing every single year without exception. People opened their pay stub, saw a bigger number, and felt like they were falling behind anyway. That's not a mood. That's math. If your raise is smaller than inflation, you got a pay cut with a smile on it. Filter 3, the raise came with a new life attached to it. Priya got a 12% raise the same year Marcus got his 8. Hers came with a promotion, new title, new team, 3 more direct reports. On paper, phenomenal outcome. In practice, Priya went from working a fairly contained 45 hours a week to a genuinely uncontained 55. Because now she's in performance reviews for 4 other people, now she's the one fielding the 2 a.m. Slack message when a client's unhappy. And, just step away for the weekend is a sentence that no longer applies to her life. Run the actual hourly math and something uncomfortable happens. Before the promotion, Priya's pay divided across her real hours worked out to a certain hourly rate. After the promotion, her raise divided across her new, much larger hours worked out to almost exactly the same hourly rate. She makes more money and she is, by the only measure that actually determines her quality of life, no better compensated for her time than she was the year before. The raise didn't buy her anything. It bought her employer more of her, at the same price per hour they were already paying. This is the trap embedded in almost every opportunity raise, the promotion, the stretch role, the "we think you're ready for more." Nobody puts the new hourly rate on the offer letter, because if they did, a startling number of promotions would look less like a reward and more like a lateral move with a fancier title stapled to it. Filter 4, your brain moved the finish line before the money even landed. Now we get to the part that isn't about tax code or inflation at all. It's about you. There's a famous psychological finding, going back to studies on lottery winners in the 1970s, that found something genuinely strange. People who won large sums of money were, within about a year, not meaningfully happier than a comparison group who hadn't won anything. Some were less happy, everyday pleasures like eating breakfast or reading the paper had stopped registering as pleasurable at all. Because the winner's baseline for what counted as a good moment had been permanently recalibrated upward by the windfall. This effect has a name, hedonic adaptation. Your brain doesn't experience your circumstances in absolute terms. It experiences them relative to your own recent baseline, and that baseline is constantly, silently updating to match wherever you currently are. Here's how this plays out with a raise specifically. The week before the raise, Marcus's income is his baseline. He's not thinking about it, it's just the water he swims in. The raise arrives. For about a week, maybe two, there's a genuine little lift, a real, measurable bump in mood, the thing he felt reading that email. And then, almost invisibly, his brain does its job. It takes the new number and quietly files it under normal. The new income becomes the new baseline. And once something is baseline, it stops being able to make you happy. Because happiness, at least the kind this research is measuring, isn't about your level. It's about your delta, how things are changing relative to where you just were. A static $6,000 a year improvement, once absorbed, produces exactly zero ongoing delta. It's just where you live now. This is why the raise felt like something for about 9 days and then felt like nothing forever after. It's not a flaw in Marcus. It's not evidence he's ungrateful or bad at appreciating what he has. It's the single most well-documented finding in the psychology of money. Filter 5, everyone around you got a raise too. There's a concept economists call the Easterlin paradox, named after the researcher who first noticed something odd. As entire countries get richer over time, average reported happiness barely moves. The proposed explanation is that happiness around money isn't really about your income. It's about your income relative to the people you're comparing yourself to. And as the whole economy grows, everyone's reference group grows with them. You don't compare your salary to what you made 5 years ago. You compare it to your neighbor, your college roommate, the guy from your old team who just posted about his new title on LinkedIn. Marcus's 8% raise arrived the same quarter his entire industry gave out roughly similar raises, because wages across his sector were all adjusting to the same labor market conditions at the same time. Which means the guy in the next cubicle, and the friend from grad school, and the sister-in-law in a totally different city all got some version of the same bump around the same time. Marcus's relative position in his social comparison group, the actual thing his brain is quietly tracking, whether he admits it or not, didn't change at all. He didn't get ahead. Everyone moved together, and standing still relative to everyone you compare yourself to feels, psychologically, indistinguishable from not moving at all. This is the part that makes people feel a little crazy, and a little ashamed, because it sounds petty when you say it out loud. Nobody wants to admit their satisfaction is partly a function of what the people around them are earning. But the data on this is remarkably consistent. Stack all 5 filters together and here's what happened to Marcus's 8% raise. The government took a real bite before it ever reached him. Inflation had already spent a meaningful chunk of it before the ink was dry. His brain adapted to the new number inside of 2 weeks and quietly reset his baseline. And his reference group never budged. What started as $6,000 real dollars arrived in his actual felt experience of life as something close to zero. Okay. Deep breath. Because I promised you this wasn't going to be a video that just tells you to feel bad and go back to your desk. Priya's coworker, a guy named Dale who does the same job at a level below her, got a much smaller raise that same year. 4%. But here's what Dale did that neither of them did. Before the raise even landed, Dale went into his payroll system and increased his 401k contribution by exactly the same percentage as his raise. His take-home pay, the actual number hitting his checking account, never changed. Not for a single pay period. He never saw the money long enough for his brain to file it under baseline, because it never touched his baseline in the first place. It went straight from raise to future, without a layover in his checking account where hedonic adaptation could get its hands on it. This is the single most important idea in this entire video, so let me say it as plainly as I can. Adaptation requires exposure. Your brain can only reset its baseline to money it actually experiences spending or holding. Money that's automatically diverted before you ever see it never becomes part of your felt reality. Dale's 4% raise, invisible in his day-to-day life, is quietly compounding in an account he won't touch for decades. Marcus's 8% raise, fully visible in his checking account every 2 weeks, has already been fully absorbed, fully adapted to, and functionally spent on nothing in particular. Dale got half the raise and kept all of it. Marcus got double the raise and kept, in any way that will matter in 10 years, almost none of it.